Hi, I'm Chad David with my co-host Ian Messenger.
Hi there.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Small Business Small Talk powered by Hibu. Today we're talking about multi-channel digital marketing. And to be more specific, why in today's world it's more important than ever that it's part of your approach to marketing your business. To help us dig into that topic, our guest today is Hibu's AVP of Digital Product Management, Nick Hopkins. Nick, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. As we've been doing these, we always like to start with learning a little bit more about our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey here at Hibu.
Wow, so it's been a long story. I've been in the digital space since back in the 90s. Started out working at MapQuest for a long time.
I love MapQuest.
And through that, through developing that kind of mapping technology, got into local advertising for small businesses who wanted their businesses to show up on the map, things like that. So that kind of morphed into a role in digital advertising, kind of broadened that beyond just the mobile and map-based kind of advertising. And so now I touch all aspects of digital marketing, really, from websites to display advertising, search, etc. Pretty much the whole gamut.
Yeah, sure.
No, that's fantastic. And I mean, let's just jump into the small talk, right? We say we're talking about multi-channel digital marketing, but that's a lot of words and a lot of long words to sort of talk about something. So like in everyday English, what are we actually saying when we're talking about multi-channel digital marketing?
So we're really talking about consumer behavior, right? So consumer behavior over the course of the internet has changed a lot. The advent of mobile phones, iPhones, people are on their smartphone, on their tablet, on the web, they're all over the place digitally. And so multi-channel is really addressing people, finding consumers across all those different platforms, what we call channels in the advertising space, right?
Yeah, and as we're looking, right, obviously Hibu services small business owners, small to medium-sized business owners. Are you finding that multi-channel digital marketing is on their minds when we're looking at them?
I would say the more savvy ones, yes, but I think what we see is that, one of the big mistakes that a lot of business owners make is they think that, to be online means they have to have a website or they have to do search advertising, but they don't look at the bigger picture, right? So consumers aren't just on your website today. Consumers spend an awful lot of time on Facebook and Instagram and properties like that. They also spend a lot of time on Google doing searches, but they have thousands of apps that they download and play with as well, games and news and sports information, kind of apps. All those places are kind of fragmenting the time that consumers spend online. And therefore, as an advertiser, you want to be in all those places to the extent that you can.
Right. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and say, well, I've got a search campaign running. I'm sure they'll find me there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about the customer journey and how traditionally that customer journey was pretty much just from A to B, straight line. But now it's from A to B, back to A, from A to C, C to D. Right. Somehow Z jumped in there. It's at the end. How did it get to the beginning? Right. And yeah, it's definitely, I guess you're saying part of having a multi-channel digital marketing approach is to be able to be in those places when people are looking for
it's both being in those places and then it's bringing consumers to those places where you are. So if you think about being in multiple places, it used to be that to be online you had to have a website. Now it's really critical that you have a Facebook page as well because consumers spend an awful lot of time in Facebook and their discovery of small businesses often happens through Facebook. And Google has something they call a Google My Business page, which is the branded page for a business that if you're on a Google search results page sits over on the right-hand side. You've often seen them, I'm sure. If you're not there as well, you're going to lose out on visibility for people who are in Google searching for you.
Right. And just like, a website would be, I guess what you'd consider, owned property for an advertiser. That's my website. It's also, multi-channel also pulls in, making sure that you're in all those places where you're just kind of allowed to play there. So, for example, Google My Business, Facebook page, obviously, no one person owns Facebook. They're just setting up, kind of staking out their claim on Facebook. Same with Apple Maps, Google Maps, all those other places that consumers look for information today about businesses.
Right. So we've actually moved off of just building websites for small businesses. when we contract with somebody to build a website, we're also, if they don't already have a Facebook business page, we're building that page for them. They don't have a Google My Business page, we're building that page for them. And we're taking the core content about their business, kind of all the important facts about their business, their name, their address, their phone number, their website URL, all that information, and we're pushing it out to a whole network of other sites so that consumers can find them wherever they are.
Right. And that includes voice search too, right?
It does. Increasingly, people are discovering businesses by, asking Google Assistant on their smartphone, or by going to Siri and asking Siri, or if they're at home with their Alexa smart speaker, they're asking their speaker, for a recommendation about, where can I find some great pizza? And if your business isn't in their listing, in their database, you won't be found on that platform.
And so what we're talking about now is like the presence, right? It's very important for businesses to set up their presence online through their listing, through their website. But once they have that presence in place, then what's the next step? What's the next thing that they should be focusing on?
Right. No, it's a great question, because being there is one thing, but just like you wouldn't want to put up a physical storefront and then not have it look proper, not have it draw people in. Your digital presence also has to draw people in, right? So you want to make sure you've got the right content on that website, Facebook page, GMB page, and throughout the whole network that's going to help the consumer make a decision to do business with you, that's going to entice them to do business with you. So that's everything from kind of the factual information about your business that I talked about before to kind of richer information. What services do you offer? What products do you offer? What are your kind of what's your unique selling proposition? What makes you different? What makes you better than the guy down the street who does the same thing that you do, offers the same kind of product that you do? And then on top of that, it's really consumers more and more today look for reviews about businesses. So it's capturing that kind of dynamic user-generated content, if you will, that you can publish onto your website, your Facebook page, your Google page, et cetera, where consumers are telling other consumers how great you are to do business with.
So those three layers, the establishing your basic information, making sure that you kind of stand out with that richer information, and then those proof points, those reviews, those confirmations that this is a good business to trust. That really kind of follows almost the evolution of, traditional advertising into the digital age. It used to be like, you're looking for a plumber, there's one plumber in town. Well, then all of a sudden there were a lot of options. You could find plenty of plumbers on Google, which is great for the consumer, but then as a consumer you have to figure out, all right, now I've got 5 options, who do I choose? And that's where that extra layer of reviews and kind of confirmation comes in.
So, yeah, exactly. I mean, every business out there is competing,
right?
And digital has gotten more and more crowded, and so it's more and more important that you stand out. And we look at, for a website presence, for example, we look at things like how well is that website converting or engaging consumers who are coming into it. It's great to bring somebody to your website, but if they don't see what they're interested in, they don't engage, that is, they don't do something on the website to show that they're interested, and they don't ultimately contact the business and become a customer, then that's been a futile exercise, right?
Sure.
So we're trying to make sure that the presence that we're building is engaging and will convert well. And in fact, going back to talking about reviews that I mentioned before, to give you a sense of how important they are to consumers, we actually see that when we publish positive reviews for our customer on the website, the engagement rate on that website almost doubles. So the number of times people who come into that website do some other action on that website is almost twice as high if that consumer is seeing positive reviews on that page when they first visit it.
Right. And that level of engagement, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think just like folks used to think, I just need to get online with a website, I think not only were they not thinking about that multi-channel aspect, but they thought that in and of itself was crossing the finish line. Hey, I've got a website. But, if we go back to your analogy of the physical storefront, if you opened a store and you put a big, awning out front with your name on it, but no one ever comes in, you wouldn't pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I've got a store. You'd go, my business is going under. Right. You've got to get people in there. You've got to get them buying product. And
if you're the only coffee shop on the street, that's great. You're going to get the business.
Sure.
But when there are 10 other coffee shops, one on every street corner, you've got to stand out, right? You've got to give somebody a reason to come into your shop.
Right.
You're listening to Small Business Small Talk, powered by Hibu. Hibu is the country's leading provider of synchronized digital marketing for small businesses, delivering more visibility, more visitors, more leads, and more customers. Visit us today at hibu.com, Hibu, hibu.com.
And we're back with Nick Hopkins, Hibu's AVP of Digital Product Management, and today we're talking about multi-channel digital marketing. So we've got the content piece. So really, you've got your presence to start off with. Once you've got your presence, you use the content to make yourself stand out. So now once you have your presence and once you have your content, what's next?
Well, next is you've got to actually tell somebody you exist. Right? So it's great, going back to the storefront analogy, it's great to have your storefront, it's great to make it look beautiful, but unless you have a lot of foot traffic coming by, you've got to tell other people your store is out there, right? And so you do that through advertising. And again, just as we talked about before, multi-channel, making sure that your ad is getting in front of people when they're searching, when they're surfing, when they're browsing, when they're in apps playing games. All those are opportunities to get your advertisement in front of people. Again, I think people make the mistake often of saying, I just need to be on search because that's when people are looking for me. Right. And that's great. Search is a wonderful platform. We run tons of search campaigns, highly effective for customers. But you're capturing that consumer when they've already made the decision to purchase, and now they're in Google and they're looking to decide who to purchase from. But if you think about it, you think about somebody who maybe is considering renovating their kitchen at some point. They're considering resodding their lawn. They're going to finally get around to repairing that crack in their roof and that leak in their roof. You want to get to that person when they're early in that decision-making process. And the way to do that is to go out beyond search and start to advertise in social media, start to advertise on mobile websites and mobile apps, et cetera. So you're getting your name and your brand out there, and you're top of mind for people when they do decide to make a purchase.
Right. And I think you can see that, I mean, even as consumers ourselves,
right.
At least on my phone, I can go in and it'll say, hey, you spent this much time in browsers, this much time on social media, this much time looking at photos on your phone. It really gives you a sense of like, wow, we are all multi-channel consumers. Even if you're thinking, I check into Facebook maybe once a day, like, you probably don't.
Right. Or that you spend enough of the time that you
right.
spend on that device in Facebook that it matters that the images and the brands that are advertising to you there are the ones that you'll recall and remember. Even if let's say you visited a site and you left, as long as they can get back to you, get back in front of your face there, well, that's a win on their part.
Yeah. Right. And that's a critical factor too, is that people don't follow a straight line in the digital world anymore. People have shorter attention spans than ever. They get interrupted more often. They're using their mobile phone while they're watching TV, binge watching something on Netflix or something, and so they're not. You need to be in front of them in multiple places throughout the day to make sure that you're getting their attention and you're driving them in when they're ready to conduct that business transaction with you. So people will often see, they'll go in and do a search, they'll end up on a website, they'll look at the website, they love it, but they get interrupted, they go off to do something else, and now you want to get that message back in front of them to remind them to come back again, right? And that's done through what we call retargeting, so taking somebody who's visited a website and putting an ad in front of them later on in the day. I'm sure most of you have probably seen that when you go onto Facebook or you go into an app and you see an ad for something that whose website you visited a few days ago. Right. So that kind of retargeting is really effective. It's also true that when people see a display ad or an ad in social media, for example, often their response to that ad isn't actually to click on it and go to the website and do something. It's actually to go into Google and then do a search for it.
Right.
So you see a lot of kind of cross-coupling between these different channels where being on display or being on social media actually benefits you on the search side and vice versa as well.
Right. Right. And that's really what we're talking about. So the importance of having this multi-channel digital marketing strategy is the reinforcement, the fact that the sum is greater than the parts.
Whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
It was close. Yeah. It was close enough. No,
this isn't a math podcast, so you get what you get.
Yeah, it's the reinforcement that they give to each other. It's better than just having the one or choosing to just have the one. The more you can layer those things, the greater return you can see on that investment.
Exactly. Not to make it a math thing again, but it's the 1 + 1 = 3, right?
Right. And it's part of what's interesting in multi-channel marketing too, because if I go back to the analogy of putting all your eggs in one basket, if you just have a website, you need that website to create awareness, create interest, hopefully get found in search. You're asking it to serve a lot of different purposes, where if you have these different, I don't want to say disparate products, but these different solutions in place, they serve different purposes. Display might be more about awareness and retargeting. You might not need to rely on people to click on the display ad, because you just need the display ad to kind of get your business top of mind again, so that they engage with your website.
Right. Another way to think of it, it's diversification of your investment as
right.
well, right? Just like you diversify a stock portfolio, you want to make sure that you're spreading your bets around.
Yep.
I would say it's also critical that all those things work together, though, very closely. So it doesn't do you any good if your display ad has a completely different branding message than your search ad and your website. If somebody clicks on your display ad, goes to your website, and they see a completely different view of your business than they thought they were getting from the ad, they're much less likely to convert. So making all those things play together requires making the content across all those, synchronous, right?
Sure.
You're listening to Small Business Small Talk, powered by Hibu. Hibu builds synchronized digital marketing solutions for small businesses across America. Your website, online listings, reviews, search, social, display, and more, all working together to maximize your results. Visit us today at hibu.com, Hibu, hibu.com.
We're back with Nick Hopkins, Hibu's AVP of Digital Product Management, talking about multi-channel digital marketing. So, as we get nearer to the end of our conversation, anything else that you feel like you'd like to add?
Well, I would just maybe go back and reiterate a couple points there around, if you think about this as a kind of layered approach, the first layer being the presence, and making sure that presence is across all the key places where people spend time on the internet, Facebook, Google, and your website, that you make sure you have the right content within that presence, so that it converts consumers who find that presence. And then you have an advertising campaign out there that's making people aware of that presence and bringing them to it in a targeted way, right? You want to bring the right consumer into that presence. You want to have the right message for them, both when they see the ad initially, when they come in, and then you want to reinforce that. We talked about retargeting before. You want to, if they don't convert the first time, you want to be able to bring them back by getting that message out in front of them. It's kind of interesting. We look at the data on this frequently, all the time, and you look at a retargeted ad, one of those ads that's redelivered to a consumer, and those actually the click-through rate on those, the conversion rate on those is 5 to 10 times higher than the initial ad out there. So that works. That getting that message back in front of people really works, and of course that's why you see the big brands doing that on social media all the time, right?
So I'll ask the stupid question in the room here. Is that easy to do? I mean, if I'm a small business owner and I'm listening to this and I go, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've got a website. I should start doing all these other things. That sounds like it's a pretty tall order.
It's one of those things where each of the individual pieces taken by itself is straightforward, right? Plenty of places you can go to build your own website.
Right.
Some of them for free. Whether you're going to build a good website that's actually going to have the right content on it. It's when you start to peel back the onion on what does it actually take to make it effective, as opposed to just check a box. That's where it gets hard. Right. You can run your own search campaign. You can go out and build your own display campaign. But when you start to add up all the pieces you need to do that well, it's time consuming. I mean, that's why big companies have marketing departments. They do that for them. They bring in specialists to do that. So we do find it, for a small business owner, it is daunting to do it well, and that's why DIY, websites, ad campaigns, et cetera, tend to underperform when relative to when it's done by a professional.
And I suspect it's much the same if you're a small business and you're working with 2, 3, 4 different partners. You talked about making sure that branding is consistent, messaging is consistent. If you have one person managing your website, someone else doing your display ads, that must also be a challenge, where any one of those components might be decent in and of itself, but do they work together without, kind of one umbrella, person looking at it? Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe a good analogy there is, back to the home, do you want to be the general contractor and bring in, different people to subcontract to do different parts of your home renovation? If you want to spend a lot of time and become an expert on hanging drywall, maybe you want to do that. But otherwise, you're generally better off hiring a general contractor who knows the business and knows what needs to be done and is making sure all those pieces are coordinated.
Sure.
Right, and I think, as small business owners should be, they're always concerned with the returns that they'll get on that investment, and investing in a synchronized strategy, I think will offer those better returns. It'll pay for itself in making sure that you are having all of these things all together, working together, reinforcing one another to get you the conversions and the results that you need.
That's right, and that comes back to looking at the data. As I mentioned before, you can do a lot to drive traffic to a website, but if it's not the right traffic, if you're not bringing the right consumer in, who's the one who's likely to actually do business with you, or when they get to the website, they're not seeing the right content, you're not going to get that kind of return on your investment, right? So it's making sure all those pieces work together. And we spend a lot of time when we're running programs for people looking at the data across the board, looking at how the search campaign is performing, the display campaign is performing, but also looking at how that traffic, when it's coming into the website, how that's converting for the customer and how well we're driving leads for that business.
Right. And going back to that idea of working with one partner, one general contractor, if you will, that's also got to be easier when you're looking at that data as the business owner. When you're trying to calculate that return on investment, you don't want to sit there with 5 different reports and go, I don't know how these overlap or don't. Maybe they look like they're conflicting. It must be so much easier to just look at one report and say, at a high level, here's how you're doing, here's where we can do more, here's where we can improve.
Absolutely. And so when we do these multi-channel programs for our customers, we provide all that data to them in a dashboard, but probably more importantly, we use all that data internally. In fact, more than what we actually show on our dashboard. And our operations teams use that data to analyze programs, analyze campaigns, analyze how different products are working together to make sure they tune them to get the best possible results.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much. This has been super informative. Thanks for joining us.
More than happy to do it.
And thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Small Business Small Talk, powered by Hibu. If you like what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and make sure you don't miss the next episode. And feel free to drop us a review. Reviews are important, as we've just discussed, and we'd love to hear your feedback, and it really helps out the show. Small Business Small Talk out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Small Business Small Talk, powered by Hibu. Hibu is a leading provider of synchronized digital marketing for small businesses across America. With Hibu, you get all the digital marketing your business needs, all from a single provider, all working together to maximize results. Visit us today at hibu.com, Hibu, hibu.com.